You think making money is always a good thing? Think again. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Payne, in for Neil Cavuto. And a new record for Americans, but it ain't one to shout about. Handouts from the government making up nearly 20% of total personal income. That's an all-time high. The amount we get from our working wages falling to its lowest level ever. Why is this dangerous news for everyone? Well, go to Ben Stein, Adam Lashinsky, Charlie Gasparino, and Jerry Willis. Ben, more people depending on the government now than ever. Are you worried?
Very worried about it indeed. Not a good situation where we have a large number of people dependent on government handouts. People are deprived of the psychological and emotional benefits of work. People who don't feel tied in and connected to the society because they're working and earning a paycheck and having that kind of self-respect. Another large group of people who are proprietors, people who live off profits, feeling that they are being battened upon. A society where people are working is a good kind of society, and it is very worrisome that we don't have more people working. Of course, a lot of this is natural because so much of the population is aging and will be getting benefits from Social Security and other forms of non-wage income. But we want more people working and more of our national income coming from work.
Jerry, you know, it's and we do have something else that's developing out of this. The people that are dependent on the government for checks are also maybe in a position where they have to keep this policy going. So they have to vote for the politicians that are going to keep it going. And it's a real serious battle of you could say have versus have not.
Well, it's a dependency cycle,
right?
Because once you're dependent on the handout, you tend to want more and more and more. And you vote that way. I mean, you're voting in your best interest. The amount of this money, you said 18.3% of Americans depended on government handouts. That's $2.3 trillion, $7,400 per household. And guess what here? And Ben, you alluded to this. The big wave of baby boomers isn't even coming through yet, so they're not even getting their handouts yet. When that happens, those numbers are going to pick up even more.
We should also point out that a lot of this is a function of the lousy economy. I tend not to fault people, average people, for the failure of Obamonomics to put people to work. We should also point out, though, that it was in the old days there was a stigma attached to welfare. My mom was on welfare when she was a kid. She grew up in a housing project. It was an embarrassment.
Right.
You do wonder, though, if it's an embarrassment now to stay on unemployment for 99 weeks.
Look, I think when you see these banks get all this money and handouts and bailouts and the auto industry bailed out, you tend to sit back and think, where's my bailout? And you feel a little less guilty for taking the money.
And by the way, I bet you that number doesn't take into account how the government sector has grown in terms of employment.
Right, absolutely.
It's become another sort of welfare agency.
Adam, sometimes it does feel like the new motto of the country should be, the harder I work, the more I owe society. The less I work, the more society owes me.
Well, I think we should be careful about confusing cause and effect here. As Charlie said, we should not be surprised by where the trend is going, given what's going on in the country. Two things. We have high unemployment. We know that. Charlie, you can blame Obamonomics, or you might look to the complete collapse of the housing market for a big variety of reasons that we've been talking about for 2 or 3 years.
Adam, let me just finish.
We aren't recovered. We aren't recovered from that yet. There is a huge portion of the economy that was getting its income from that and tangentially from the housing economy, which collapsed.
Adam, here's
for a
why,
lot of reasons.
Here's why I blame Obamonomics. He spent he and the Democrats in Congress spent $800 billion on a stimulus package that utterly failed. And that's why I blame Obamonomics. That was supposed to create shovel-ready jobs in the construction industry. And guess what it was? It was a transfer payment to states. Unemployment in construction is 20%. If you look at some of those numbers, I bet you a lot of them are construction workers.
And by the way, Adam,
I'm not disputing that with you. But what I do want to say, that goes to the tenor of the conversation that we're having. I do not think that people in the United States would prefer to be getting a handout, Charles, or would prefer to be on welfare.
Well, look,
I think they would prefer to be working.
The stigma's not there.
I want to get back to Ben 1 second, because Ben, it almost doesn't matter at this point what caused it. This is a reality, and with this reality comes a different type of America.
A very different type of America, and with the greatest possible respect, most Americans, of course, would rather get up in the morning, go to work, and earn a paycheck in an honest way. But I talk to social workers who are talking to people who are on unemployment or on welfare, and very unfortunately, a lot of those people have become habituated to not working and just getting a handout, and they would not prefer to go to work. That's a very unfortunate social situation. And also, only 5% of the economy was in construction before the crash. That's a very large number, but it's not an enormously large number.
Jerry, you were shaking your head.
Well, I tend to agree with him here. Look, people are starting to feel like if I'm not getting something from the government, I'm something of a chump. The auto industry did, banks did, everybody seemed to get a piece of the action. So if I don't get a piece of the action, it's my bad.
No, you're right.
And
There is a huge
think
systemic issue here when we hand out corporate welfare way we've done. And by the way, this is a bipartisan thing. I mean, TARP.
Yep.
Was a Republican creation.
Right.
We should point out. And people, I think average people have every right to say, listen, why should the banks get all the money? Why shouldn't I? But my point was unemployment in construction industry was.
But I don't want to get on that topic, guys. I don't want to talk about that because I want to get back to you, Adam, and talk about the notion that this is, from an economic point of view, we can't continue this way. No matter who you want to blame, no matter what you want to blame, if more and more people are depending on the government for their income, at some point, this whole thing dries up.
Well, I completely agree with you. We don't want to have the situation that England had in the 60s or 70s where it had become a welfare state. And I don't think that we do. I think the numbers are skewed by what's going on. And I think it's incumbent on us to educate people. I get that people are upset that GE doesn't pay any taxes. We should be. But I don't think we should tell people, don't be upset by what TARP did in bailing out the banks. It was necessary. We don't have to like that, but we would not have wanted the alternative, Charlie.
But it wasn't just TARP. It wasn't just TARP. There was $982 billion worth of stimulus that went out the door. It wasn't just the bank bailout. Everybody got a check, and then you start thinking, hey, I need another one.
And you don't think that they're the Fed is subsidizing salaries on Wall Street right now?
Yes.
0% interest rates?
Ben, I want you to put the exclamation point on this for us.
I have to say what Charlie Gasparino just said was so brilliant. My head is reeling. Absolutely. Government is subsidizing both at the very top end and also at the very bottom end and the lower bottom end. It's a terrible situation. Work has got to become a very, very high priority moral good in this country.
Up next, the one thing America's